When we spoke the last time, you were finance minister, now you're trade minister. What are you hoping to do differently?
Yes, thank you. It's a new portfolio for me. The government just been formed about 1.5 ago, and today we're here in Davos again. So the focus as a trade minister obviously is to ensure that trade continues to be one of the key drivers of growth for Malaysia, and investment as well. So these are the two areas that we're focusing, and of course industry is part of the portfolio, focusing on industries that gives that high quality investments that Malaysia wants to see.
There is great competition for FDI,
Yes.
especially within the ASEAN regions, in particular Vietnam. I mean, what's your strategy to get that FDI you need?
Yes. Well, if you look at ASEAN, we have not just Vietnam, we have Thailand, Indonesia, everyone going after, I guess, the same kind of investment. And for Malaysia, we have been, and since the 1970s, focusing on certain sectors, especially the ENG sector, the semiconductor sector. And today, it has contributed meaningfully to GDP. It's about 6% of GDP, and we are the 7th largest supplier of semiconductor for the world. So how are we going to compete going forward? I think the focus will have to be on making it easier, ease of doing business. I think that's one of the key opportunities for Malaysia to improve itself on. I think so. My focus will be to ensure that when it comes to investments, the ease of doing investments in Malaysia will be improved.
Realistically, how much FDI can you attract this year?
Yeah.
Because in the first 9 months of last year, you attracted about 45 billion
Yeah, you're right.
US dollars,
Right.
and that's pale in comparison from before.
Yes, I think, of course, in terms of growth, it was a positive growth, but you're right, in absolute terms, compared to pre-pandemic, it's not as strong as before. But trade has improved, and so how do we focus back on FDI? So I think we need to go back to basics. We need to look at what are the areas.
Realistically, how much are you looking at attracting
of
for
course,
2023?
Okay, so we link it to, of course, the economy. I think 2023 global economy is expected to face some headwinds. Malaysia growth is expected to be around 4 to 5%, but investment is about global trade, global investment. So for us, we have a target. Yeah, and our target obviously is about 20% increase from last year. We've seen trade also increase about 30%, close to 30% compared to last year. But again, it's the measure of FDI, right? To me, traditionally, measuring FDI is about the absolute dollar value that comes to Malaysia. But how much of those is realized? How much of those is translated to jobs? What is the spillover effects? I think that's key. And the number has to be a number that focuses on the right kind of investment.
20% increase is pretty conservative.
It's not, to me, given the, like I said, the economic landscape, the global economic landscape.
But we do have a China that's reopening, and China is the biggest trading partner, accounting for about 20%
of Malaysia, yes, correct.
of your investments. Can China provide that boost, and why not more than that?
Yeah. Okay, if you take into account China, of course, there's still uncertainty there, and there will be a lag effect. All right, so maybe you're right there. There's a bit of being a bit conservative, but again, no one knows the impact of China for 2023. I think 2024 is clearer, but 2023 there will be challenges, and of course, in the commodity sector, it's a sector that will consume what China wants, but for the manufacturing sector, there will be a lag for 2023.
CPTPP, Malaysia signed CPTPP last year.
Yes.
Now there's some murmurings of some resistance to that signing. Will Malaysia review that signing?
Yeah, that was discussed. In fact, it was one of the first topic of discussion in the cabinet. It was, as you know, correctly stated just now, it was ratified by the government in November, and in December the new government was formed. And we had a discussion, we explained what are the concerns, what are the mitigating factors, and the cabinet has agreed, the Prime Minister himself, of course, has agreed that we will continue with what was the decision that was made before. And we'll monitor this closely, but we have also made a public announcement that we are continuing with CPTPP.
The ringgit has been a laggard, especially when compared to regional peers. How comfortable are you with the level of the currency, and where do you see the ringgit headed?
Okay. Well, now I'm wearing my trade minister industry portfolio. I can try and comment on it as an independent. We look at ringgit. I think you again, we have to look at the growth of the economy, right? For Malaysia, we are projecting a growth of between 4 to 5%, and we are seeing that the ringgit has actually strengthened to where it was before. Right, but I think what your point is relatively to other currencies. So Malaysia's growth will have a bearing on the strength of the ringgit this year. I think, yeah, that will be the key determinant.
So you're comfortable with where the currency is traded?
Well, it is. Ringgit is floated freely. So it is markets that dictate the value of ringgit, and from the trade perspective, from investment perspective. As long as we are comparatively moving in the same direction with the basket of countries that are trading with us, we should be okay.
What's the status of global trade? What's your perspective on it, given greater calls for friendshoring, onshoring, reshoring, deglobalization? Yeah.
Well, it has been a major debate in Davos, WEF, and even before that, and Malaysia and many other emerging markets have been discussing what are our options, right? Because we always hear from the perspective of the global large economies. In the short to medium term, I must admit that we do enjoy some of the spillover effects of that concerns about.
How so, and quantify that?
Okay, how so? Because the concern about supply chain, right? The supply chain resiliency, security of that supply chain, and because of the so-called geopolitics between two major countries, in
the US and China.
US, China, and many, what you just say, the reshoring, onshoring, friendshoring, and Malaysia, and ASEAN as a whole, has somewhat benefited in the medium and short term. But in the longer term, we all agree that it will not be good for globalization. We are asking whether globalization is dead or not. People are saying, yeah, globalization is still happening, but it's slowing. They're talking about slowbalization, right? People are asking whether people are focusing on whether globalization has failed, But to me, we need to go back to fundamentals. The reason why we, are, as Malaysia and the world is trading is because it's something that will benefit all, right? So I think what's important going forward is that the leadership of these major economies need to understand that trade is an important part. There is concern, of course, about security, but between security and growth, you need to balance that.
How much have supply chain disruptions eased in your view? Yeah,
the supply chain, okay, pre-pandemic levels, we have not gone back to where it was before, right? After pandemic, it has improved, but there's still major concerns. There are major concerns about labor shortage. There's major concern about stock, input shortage. In fact, there's sometimes hoarding of that input, especially in certain sectors. So we are still need room for improvement. But again, it is driving prices up. It is driving inflation up. So I think what you mentioned earlier about countries putting in extra policy measures that may be protective in nature doesn't help that supply chain.
There are expectations that oil could get to $110 per barrel. You're an oil-producing country. What are your thoughts on where oil is headed?
Yeah. Well, people are saying, economists are saying that one of the reasons is because of China, right? The reopening of China will mean that, as mentioned just now, the demand for commodities, energy, will increase, and therefore prices are expected to go up. So for Malaysia, obviously, as a net exporter of commodities as well as energy in terms of oil as well, we stand to benefit from that. However, as you know, it does mean that we also need to be fiscally responsible about assisting those people who are in need, given the higher energy prices.
How much will that contribute to growth?
Well, I don't have that figure for 2023. I think the budget will be announced by the new Prime Minister, the new Finance Minister on 24th of February, and that's when our Prime Minister will be announcing the official new revised budget for Malaysia.
What is there to look forward to in terms of the budget? As Finance Minister, you're pushing for higher value creation in the industries. As Trade Minister now, what are you hoping to see?
Yes. Well, first of all, we did present the budget for 2023, and then a week later, it was Parliament was dissolved. I must say, I wish I'd given more budget to the Ministry of Trade. But however, the focus, and I think our Prime Minister is focusing on governance, focusing on quality of life, which is the cost of living, and growth, right? So I hope in this budget, allocation that's given to the relevant initiatives that will drive our economic growth for Malaysia.
For trade, what are you hoping to see?
So for trade, I'm hoping to see a budget that will allow us to attract more investments through a mechanism where it makes it easier for investors. Of course, easier means incentives, ease of doing business. The other thing about Malaysia is, opening up we're always talking about capital, right? It's in dollar capital, but also we need to look at human capital. So perhaps we need to be more open about getting top talent into Malaysia.